Got Winnipeg, Minnesota, 53-54. We've got Minnesota -110 to -115. Home favorites here. Slight home favorites here in Game 4. The total 5.5 shaded to the under, about -115 to -120. Minnesota, wow, they could barely muster 6 scoring chances, quality scoring chances in 2 games in Winnipeg, and they muster 6 goals in 1 game last night. How about that? See how quickly a series can turn, and Minnesota with a 6-2 eruption over the Winnipeg Jets in Game 3 at home. And now all of a sudden, do we question if we've maybe got a series on our hands after all? This Game 4 now that we're into Game 4s and we've got these 2-1 scenarios setting up, you have to ask yourself now, or is it a situation where it's just Game 3 home team down 2-0, they have one rise-up effort in them, they get the win, or is that a staying power to maybe get themselves fully back in to this series? Sometimes you see 2-0 down, 2-1, they win Game 3, and then the other team just pulls their bootstraps up even harder and blows them away the rest of the series, and they win in 5 or 6. But you also see times where a team's down 2-0, they get that Game 3 home win, and they also win Game 4 at home, and they've got legitimate momentum and are right back into the series. I'm thinking more of the former here. I still think Winnipeg's better than Minnesota. They didn't have a great performance last night. I like the angle with Hellebuck here coming in back after getting pulled in that game last night. I think you get him responding in kind. The Tyler Myers injury is definitely a bother for me, though, with this Winnipeg Jets team. He had been playing very good on the blue line for Paul Maurice's team. Chance he might be out for a decent amount of time for the Winnipeg Jets. So how they make up for that on the back end will be interesting to note. And I think you're going to see the top players for Winnipeg really play a lot better, other than a soft goal that Blake Wheeler scored on Devin Dubnyk, which was just a horrendous goal for him to give up in that game. It was a quiet night for Patrick Laine. It was a quiet night for Brian Little. Quiet night, for Mark Scheifele and the best players on that Winnipeg Jets team. So I think you're going to see everybody, Hellebuck, the goalie as well, be a lot better tomorrow night in Game 4 of this series. I don't know if this one win for Minnesota, where things just started to spiral toward Minnesota and against Winnipeg in the second period last night. It was just bang, 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 and it was 5-2, and then later 6-2 before you could blink. So I'm not convinced just yet. We've got a series on our hands. Minnesota's got to show it one more time. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet with this game as of yet. Again, this is a game tomorrow night, so there's a lot of time. But I will tell you right now, from a side perspective, be the Jets, woo, or pass for me. Dana Lane, Winnipeg, Minnesota. This is on his card for Tuesday night, Game 4 at the XL Energy Center. Dana, what do you like?
We're going to break out in the Benny and the Jets song, and well, we didn't get that. So disappointment all around. I'd also like to give a shout out to Brian Blessing, who has the pen in hand writing down every selection that we make. So thank you, Brian, for watching the show. Stop harassing me on text. That'd be great. As you mentioned, Ian, the Tyler Myers injury is huge, and I think he's probably one of the best defensemen that nobody even knows about, and he gets shoved down on that third pairing with Ben Sherratt, but certainly he could be on most teams' first or second pairing, and to not have him in the lineup now is a huge hole for Winnipeg, especially when you got two teams that are starting to feel like, well, we both can score. And from a Winnipeg standpoint, there's probably only one or two teams in the league that are better offensively than they are. And now you're going to have a Jets team that has no travel excuses. And I know that the Toronto Maple Leafs network, the NHL network this morning was talking about how it's not that big of a deal because of travel, and there was no excuses whatsoever. Well, I completely disagree with that, because these athletes are creatures of habit, and anytime you break that habit, it completely messes up their detailed way of life. And so, for me, you're going to get the real Winnipeg Jets tonight. And I like Winnipeg to win this series. We'd like Minnesota to win the game the other night. But I think both teams, especially if Winnipeg scores first, I think both teams it's going to be up and down the ice, with the total going over. If Minnesota scores first, we may have a losing ticket, because they're going to go into their shell and try to protect that lead. But I just think Minnesota's the better of the two teams. I think they're going to use their speed to crash Devin Dubnyk a little bit more, than not be kept to the outside like they were in Game 3. So I'm going over the total in Game 3.
All right, so over 5.5. Yeah, game 4. Yeah, over 5.5 for Dana. He likes the over 5.5 game 4. Yeah, it's a weird series. I thought more likely we see overs in Winnipeg in this series than we do see them in Minnesota. But so far, 2 unders in Winnipeg, and we got our first over of the series last night in Minnesota. And Dana's going right back to that same thought process in game 4, Winnipeg, Minnesota over. Let's go to Andrew McGinnis. He's also in on the Jets and Wild game 4 matchup. Andrew, what do you like here?
Yeah, guys, I want to make it really, really clear that from when I was watching that game, that is not okay what happened to the Winnipeg Jets last night. I mean, yesterday afternoon, Dana had a great point. We were talking about the mental aspect of the playoff game. And he said that, they might come into this thinking that, they've had the series, they've taken care of the first 2 games. And, that's not okay. That's not an excuse. That's not a valid excuse for any player to be able to give their coach at the end of a friggin' playoff game. You can't go home and look yourself in the mirror or go to your hotel room and say, oh, shit, well, it was the first game in Minnesota. We'll let ourselves off the hook. That is not how a team is going to win. And that's not how you're going to win the Stanley Cup. You have to look at the bigger picture here. I've got a future on this series right now. I had a future on the Jets to win this series 4-1, and I'm standing by it right now. To me, that was the game that Minnesota's going to win. If you look at the stat sheet, all the players that should come out to play pretty much came out to play for that Minnesota Wild team. And, it was a typical thing for the Jets. They're up 2-0. They pretty much had their stars doing very, very well at home. They head to Minnesota, and it's just all out. It's all out of the way. I mean, they're just not playing their game. And I think that the fact that we can get plus 100 at 5 dimes for tomorrow night's game is absolutely ridiculous. It's beyond me. And I think that the fact that one game, everything went right for this Minnesota Wild team. All the bounces went the right way. All the passes were perfect. They just capitalized when they had to. The players definitely weren't there for the Jets, but everything was right, set in stone, set up perfectly for this Minnesota Wild team. They played their best game. They're going to play all series. But I'm looking at the bigger picture here, guys. We got to think about this for a second. How are they going to beat this Nashville Predators team if they're just giving up games like that, like last night? It looked to me last night like they did not give one shit about game 3 of this series. They did not care because they know they're going to win this series. Let's face it. This, they outmatch. There's no way, Ian talked about those 2 different scenarios where if Minnesota wins the next game now, they're heading back to Winnipeg like, wow, we have actually a puncher's chance of winning this series. That's not going to happen whatsoever. I think the first option that Ian said is going to happen where it's, hello, we just got awakened, and this is exactly what we need to have to wake me up. It's not fair. This is not how it should be in NHL hockey. I know stuff like they're not going to sweep them every team just because you're have the better talent, but the fact is that should not have happened yesterday. I hope Paul Maurice went in the locker room and just absolutely gave it to them because they are the better hockey team. They are a better complete defensive team, I think, and they completely just gave that up and threw that out the window last night, yesterday afternoon. So tomorrow night we should see a complete different Winnipeg Jets team. Look to bet the team total over. Winnipeg at plus 100. I'm loving that. There's no way in hell we're going to see the exact same team that we saw at a Minnesota Wild yesterday. The Jets respond big time. I'm going to cash my future at Jets winning the series 4-1.
Yeah, Jets very good off a loss as well. Good off a loss road record in road games, 10-6 off a loss this season. So that's a good role for them. And the routine was screwed up, as Dana mentioned. Having a fly day in day a game routine messed up, and clearly that was an out of sync Winnipeg team. That was an out of sorts team on the ice last night, especially when things got away from them. Just bad coverage, too many penalties as well. Got the better of the Jets last night. I think, the routine's going to be back to normal tomorrow, unaltered, rein this thing in. Paul Maurice wasn't panicking after that game. Yeah, I think you'll see a much better Winnipeg team tomorrow night. Last game is Vegas, LA, 55-56 on the rotation here. We've got LA. Actually, I think we got to get Alex in on Winnipeg, Minnesota. My bad, Alex. What do you got?
Yeah, no, this game, hopefully I might possibly be attending this game. One thing I got to say is kudos to all the people that actually made it through the bullshit outside to show up to this game. It was about 17,000 people in attendance. I know some people even from Winnipeg made the drive down. So kudos to them for watching. Obviously, it was a good game for the Wild and their fans. But this is a game, like I said, I think the routine, I think everything was disrupted by the Jets, and it really showed, especially in the late of the first period and all the second period. That's when everything's kind of really unraveled with them. On top of the fact that the Wild, something that I've bitched about them for years is that they always make the extra pass, especially on the power play. They don't take enough quality shots. They always make one or two too many passes, and they didn't do that last night. For some reason, they were able to see the net a little brighter, a little bigger for them, and they were able to score early and often. So that's a huge thing for the Wild. We haven't seen them do that in consecutive games in quite some time, though. For one game that they'll have a good effort on the power play, have a good offensive shot outing, they seem to revert back to their norm, making extra passes. Like I said, the Jets are finally settled into town. They're at the hotel, comfy St. Paul hotel. They'll have a couple of days to get over what was an absolute clunker. If you look at the last time they lost a game before last night, it was a 6-2 loss in Chicago. They went on to win 7 straight. Like I said, this team is very resilient. They're still the better team as far as skill level goes. And like I said, we're getting a great price of them at even money. So I'm looking at Winnipeg, and more than likely we'll be probably looking at the first period over in this one too. I do think we're going to see at least a couple of goals go in for the Wild. So I could see this be maybe a 1-1 game after 20, and then the Jets run away from there.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.